Everybody repeat after me. P-R-A-C-T-I-C-E. Gon' practice, hey, gon' practice, oh, gon' practice every single day. It's a part of life. Practice to make things better, like learning to read and write. A baby bird has to practice to fly, to stay high up in the sky. Practice drawing a face or climbing a tree, and practice your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, so you can count to 10 and multiply by 5 and add all the way to infinity and find the word that rhymes. Baking bread with your mom, building castles made of sand. You gotta practice to achieve. Practice singing with the band. Come on, everybody repeat after me. P-R-A-C-T-I-C-E. Gon' practice.
So what are we gonna do today?
How about catching up with Barney?
First, we'll need to invite everyone.
Sure thing. Everyone's invited.
Sure, we'll be there.
It's Barney and Friends. Weekdays on PBS Kids, or watch anytime you want at pbskids.org. Want to hear some dynamite dino news?
We want to hear it!
Dinosaur Train is on weekdays.
Really?
You kidding? Yeah!
Catch Dinosaur Train weekdays on PBS Kids, or watch anytime you want at pbskids.org.
Guess what this is, Miss Rosa?
Cardboard from a used paper towel roll?
Well, it is a paper towel roll from the recycle bin, but it's also the world's smallest race car tunnel.
Wow, a race car tunnel? Well, how does a race car drive through that small tunnel?
All you need is a small race car. I mean, all you need is a smaller race car.
Catch Fetch, the game show with the one and only Ruffman.
Give me a command.
Roll over.
Roll over I don't do, and that's personal choice. Go Fetch!
It's Fetch, weekdays on PBS Kids Go, or watch anytime you want at pbskidsgo.org.
Tune in for all new episodes of Angelina Ballerina, The Next Steps.
I'm Angelina Ballerina.
It's a whole new year at Camembert Academy.
Really, really? Really, really.
Join Angelina and all her friends as they discover new dances, closer friendships, and new ways to have fun.
Absolutely, positively.
Tune in for all new episodes of Angelina Ballerina, The Next Steps, right here on PBS Kids. Join Angelina Ballerina every morning at 8 and afternoons at 4:30.
Over there, let's go!
We're in the wild with wild Kratts, going where no human has gone before.
Not anymore!
Watch Wild Kratts weekdays on PBS Kids Go or anytime at pbskidsgo.org.
Thomas and Friends, making tracks to great destinations.
Dear Christopher, here is your friend Thomas the Tank Engine. He wanted to come out of his station yard and see the world. These stories tell you how he did it. I hope you will like them because you helped me to make them. Your loving Daddy.
James grumbled that he had too much shunting to do. How could I be expected to see to everything? He would grunt. Here, there and everywhere. I shall wear my wheels out, and what will the Fat Controller do then? Henry and Gordon took no notice. They knew James, and they'd heard it all before.
It's easy enough to bustle about looking busy, said Gordon. But it's the real work you do that actually counts, put in Henry.
Rubbish, snorted James, and bashed some trucks angrily. One day, Edward was at the shed. While he was there, a message came through. A train of trucks loaded with stone blocks was waiting at his station. He was to fetch it and bring the trucks to the harbour for loading onto the ships. James looked envious. I wish it was me. Edward felt sorry for him. Why don't you go and collect the trucks then? He suggested. I'll stay here in the yard and shunt. It'll be a nice change for you. Their drivers agreed and James puffed proudly away. This is nice, he chirruped happily to himself as he sped along the rails. But he didn't stay cheerful for long. The dirty, rude trucks are always on the lookout for an engine they can be spiteful to. They had heard about James, and when they saw him backing towards them, they jeered loudly. Look, it's Bootlace James, they cried loudly to each other. Now we'll have some fun. A bootlace won't help him today. They sniggered to each other and made a naughty plan to spite James. The stone was heavy, and the load was bad enough without the trucks making it worse, but they didn't care about that. They tried all sorts of tricks. They slipped their brakes on so that James had a difficult time starting. Come on, you lot! Then they crept close behind each other and would stop one by one, so that a string of jerks ran right along the length of the train. They'll break a coupling if they're not careful, said James crossly. Determined not to be beaten, James struggled on, and slowly he dragged the trucks into the harbour yard and pushed them onto the wharf ready to be unloaded. Then he steamed wearily back to the yard for some quiet shunting. Gordon couldn't help but laugh when he saw how exhausted James looked.
Well, he remarked to Henry. Here's James back after doing some proper work. I expect he needs a rest now.
James pretended he hadn't heard.
The island of Sodor is a wonderful place. There are lots and lots of engines. Who's that puffing along the track? It's Thomas! Thomas is a bright blue tank engine with red stripes. He has 6 small wheels, a short funnel and dome, and the number 1 painted in yellow on his tanks. Thomas is always busy and is especially happy when he's with his carriages, Annie and Clarabelle. Thomas knows everyone on the island of Sodor, but he does have one special friend, and that's Percy. One day, Sir Topham Hatt told all the engines that the railway inspector was coming. He would give a special prize to the best turned-out engine. Gordon, James, and Emily were all sure a big engine would win the prize, but Thomas and his best friend Percy hoped they might win. The big engines laughed at them. Thomas and Percy had to work at the quarry. By the end of the day, Percy and Thomas were very, very dirty. Percy was sure they would never win first prize now. Thomas wanted to cheer his friend up, so they raced to the washdown. But when they arrived, Gordon, James, and Emily all looked like the smartest engines on the railway. Now Thomas was worried, but his friend Percy cheered him up. When Thomas and Percy arrived at the coaling plant, they were surprised. James biffed into a freight car. Now all the big engines, Sir Topham Hatt and the inspector were covered in coal dust. But not Thomas and Percy. They won first prize, and each had a ribbon. Thomas knew he couldn't have done it without his friend Percy. Sometimes you need to rely on your friends. One day, Thomas was picking up telephone engineers. They were to mend the telephone poles. A great storm had blown them down. Then Thomas saw something wonderful. Edward told him about an old story. It said that there was something magical at the end of a rainbow. Thomas huffed and puffed all over the island. He was looking for the end of the rainbow. Thomas was so busy, he didn't have time to say hello to his friends. And he didn't have time to help his friend. Then there was trouble. Thomas hadn't seen the telegraph pole. Thomas was stuck. He thought none of his friends would help him. But Thomas was wrong. All Thomas's friends passed on the news that he was in trouble. In no time, Harvey arrived to pull Annie and Clarabelle back onto the rails. Now Thomas didn't want to look for the end of the rainbow anymore. He wanted to be really useful. Later, Thomas puffed back to Tidmouth Sheds. There was the end of the rainbow, and there were all his friends. Thomas's friends are very important. They make Sir Topham Hatt's railway very special, and they make Thomas feel he is the luckiest steam engine ever. Today, Thomas must take a boat to the docks. But he needs to go under a bridge. Which is the best bridge for Thomas to go under? The first bridge is wide enough for Thomas and the boat. But what about the mast? This bridge isn't tall enough. What about this bridge? It's very tall. The mast will fit under that bridge. But is it wide enough? This bridge is much too narrow. What about this bridge? It's very tall and it's very wide. Thomas can pull the boat under this bridge. Well done, Thomas. Today, Thomas has to collect some timber from the new timber yard. It's the first time Thomas has been there. Toby is telling him the way. See if you can remember the way too. First, Toby tells Thomas, go along the seaside. Next, collect some water at the water tower. Then puff through Wellsworth Station. Thomas is trying to remember all those places. Can you remember them? Along the seaside, collect some water at the water tower, and through Wellsworth Station. Then, Toby tells Thomas, go under the stone bridge. Then follow the canal until you arrive at the timber yard. Thomas is ready to leave. I hope you were listening. Thomas might need your help. Can you remember where he goes first? First, Thomas goes along the seaside. Can you remember what Thomas needs to do next? He needs to fill up with water. Now where does he go? Through Wellsworth Station. Now, was it under or over the stone bridge? Can you remember? Under the stone bridge. Then follow the canal. And at last, Thomas arrives at the new timber yard. Did you remember all those places? Thomas did. Well done, Thomas. Here are 3 engines. Some of them are happy, and some of them are sad. Can you tell who is which? Here's Percy. He has been pulling mail cars. Percy likes delivering the mail. Do you think he's happy or sad? That's right. Percy is happy. Now here's Gordon. He has been pulling the express. Gordon is very proud to pull the express. Do you think he's happy or sad? Yes, Gordon is happy. And here's James. He's been working at the coaling plant, and there is coal dust all over his shiny red paintwork. James doesn't like being dirty. Do you think he's happy or sad? You're right. James is sad. 2 of the engines are happy, but one of them is sad. What will make James happy? That's right. Going to the washdown. Being clean and shiny makes James very happy.
Rosie is a pink tank engine that is new to the island of Sodor. Thomas and Rosie got along, and he helped show her around the yard. But whenever Thomas is unavailable, Edward comes to help her. Edward always found her to be quite impressive with shunting, but the two would often disagree on certain topics. Regardless, the two are still good friends. One day, Rosie was shunting trucks near Nafford Station when she saw Gordon at the platform, with his coaches in tow. He was waiting for the passengers to board as he sizzled proudly. Rosie watched in awe as the guard eventually blew his whistle, and Gordon set off. As Gordon rolled out of the station, the coaches shined proudly under the bright sun. Rosie was mesmerized. Wow! I would love to pull those coaches. Edward pulled alongside, chuckling. That's known as the Express, explained Edward. It's a train that goes across the island all the way to Victorstown. Rosie was even more ecstatic. You think I could pull those coaches sometime, Edward? She asked hopefully. Pah! Snorted James. Little tank engines can't pull the Express by themselves. It requires a strong engine like me. Quite enough out of you, James, replied Edward, before looking back to Rosie. But he is right. It is a heavy train, and must stay on time. I'm sorry, Rosie, but it just isn't possible. Rosie was disappointed, but persistent. But she didn't argue. She just went back to shunting. There has to be a way. I'm sure I could do it. I'm sure I will do it. He can't always be right. Rosie had no idea how. But the chance would come sooner than expected. A big storm had approached the island that night, and Rosie had to sleep in a nearby shed with Thomas. By morning, Thomas had already gone to his branch line, and Rosie arrived at Knapford Station, only to not find Edward there. Even more so, the passengers were waiting impatiently at the platforms. It was then Sir Topham Hatt appeared. Due to the storm last night, he explained worriedly, a pole had fallen and disabled the turntable at Tidmouth, leaving my good engine stranded there. We'll be mighty late when an engine can come here, but I'd like you to assemble the coaches so they can at least be seated. Rosie then saw her chance. Sir, we can't be too late, she exclaimed. It doesn't look like too many passengers. Perhaps I could take them. Sir Topham Hatt was about to reject her offer, but then looked back to the passengers. Farewell, Rosie. You may pull the express, but be cautious and be patient. Rosie was excited. She shunted the express together and coupled up, waiting as the passengers boarded. The guard then blew his whistle. All right, Rosie, said her driver. Steady now. She tried moving, but soon found it harder as her wheels began to slip. But, with enough effort, she began moving out of the station. She was nowhere near as fast, but she struggled on, her driver and fireman being hard at work to produce enough steam. Rosie found it very hard, but struggled on. I can't do it. I will do it, she panted. She then arrived at Edward Station, feeling worn out as she went to refill herself once more. The station master then appeared. Gordon's Hill is up ahead. You won't be able to make it without a backer for the rest of the trip. Rosie was sad. She knew he was right. The backer soon arrived. It was Edward. Got here as soon as I can, exclaimed Edward. They managed to fix the turntable. Rosie looked at Edward, still very much saddened. I'm sorry, Edward. You are right. I guess I am just a silly engine. But Edward surprised her. Silly? He questioned. You made it this far all by yourself. Comes to show that even an old engine like me can't always be right. I'm proud of you. You are a useful engine. Rosie smiled happily. She felt much better. Rosie once again set off with the express, with Edward behind her to back her. They reached Gordon's Hill as Edward called out, "Show them what 2 engines could do with determination!" The hill was a hard, steep climb, but they eventually made it to the top. Edward stayed behind, and the two of them helped make up for lost time. They eventually reached their final stop at Vickerstown, and the passengers cheered for their hard work. The 2 engines were getting ready for the return trip when Sir Topham Hatt approached them. "Excellent job, you two. You both have worked very hard today, and you both shall receive a brand new coat of paint and a long rest." He then walked away, with Rosie looking to Edward. Who knew being wrong could be so rewarding? Edward couldn't help but laugh.
PBS Kids.
WordWorld, friends are always around to help.
I'm scared.
Of what?
School.
It's okay, Shark. We go to school to learn.
WordWorld, weekdays on PBS Kids or watch anytime you want at pbskids.org.
PBS Kids Go and Arthur enter a strange world. Do you want me to go into the city of doom? Next week, beware. It's It's a spectacular week of creepy new shows.
Neil Gaiman? What are you doing in my falafel?
And frightful favorites. It has to be as scary as you can make it.
Your evil laugh needs work.
Watch Arthur anytime on pbskidsgo.org.
Read it, think it, speak it, write it. Whatever you imagine, words can describe it.
Stay tuned. The Electric Company is coming up next.
Come and join the Electric Company. Plug it in, now you have